Hey, tube users. I'd been planning on doing this episode a bit sooner, but now that we are just fresh off the heels of NAMM, I think it's better timing. I'm putting these two things of breaking into the music business and rehearsing a band together because, in my opinion, having a band can be a good place to start for getting prepared to work in the music industry. Now, I get asked the question, how do you break into the music business, a lot. Most recently, YouTube user Jay Crane, I hope I'm saying that right, asked this, and I left them a very long message that I'd like to share here. I'm going to paraphrase a little of what I wrote back, and I just feel like the response I gave should be used to reach a few more ears. And I'm dedicating this episode to this because I truly wish there was a perfect path to set you all on to find your way into the music business, but there just isn't. Most people don't even get as far as having just a foot barely in the door. And it's not always clear what will lead to any amount of success. So with that said, here's the message. I've always felt like there was room for everyone to get work, but the truth is only a select few do. These few people get most of the gigs because they are very good at what they do and because people like them and want to work with them. They will have their position getting the top gigs until they retire or die. Now, that sounds grim, but that's across the board in nearly all disciplines of musical need. You might be saying, well, one person can't get every job, and that's true. But between the top guys in their field or instruments, they are the ones getting the gist of the higher tier work. That's because the people hiring for these gigs have to know that they can rely on you to get the job done. Now, once your foot's in the door and you're getting work, remember, if you can't do a gig with a positive attitude and no drama, there are hundreds of other people lined up to take what you have earned. Now, next, you have to know what you're worth, but you also might have to do some things for spec. You can only say no once to some of these people, and they might want your work for free. In some cases, your payment will be having a credit on a well-known artist's song or album. If that is the case, get it in writing with penalties for them if they don't follow through. The idea that doing a speculative gig could bring you more work is something which I've actually found to be mostly true. I've taken on several passion projects that led to great paying gigs. As a side note, however, on the film scoring that I do, when a director or producer says that they didn't think to save or have a budget for the score, I never offer my skills or the end musical IP that I create as a work for hire. I retain full ownership, control, and keep both publishing and writing and their respective residuals. I'll generally give the production agreement to use my score in perpetuity unless the film gets distribution. Then they just owe me a flat percentage of all sales as well as any mechanicals. If you can't budget your film properly, you cannot have the musical IP that I'm creating for said film without that agreement at all. Know your worth. Okay, onward. Be diverse and play and listen as well to many musical styles. Be capable and comfortable in reading music charts. Some of the best gigs I've had were in the pit, in the orchestra for musicals. This is an awesome way to meet talented people and get your face out there. As a matter of fact, those were some of the best paying gigs as well, because, you knew you'd have work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I would think about what region you live in. Is it oversaturated there? Are there already literally hundreds of thousands of individuals that could deliver what you offer in the area you live? Probably not. But with that in mind, you also want to move or be where the business is, or just adjacent. I was Hollywood adjacent for a decade, and that's when I got nearly most of my work. A good way to get your foot in the door also is being a runner at the studios. You should know and frequent the club scene as well if you're old enough. I don't drink, but there were venues that I would frequent kind of early in my career so I could learn how to navigate networking with people in the business. You have to go and see shows of all kinds, period. That means bands, theater, movie releases, dances, etc. If you don't enjoy doing this, then this business might not be for you. You really have to enjoy going and seeing shows. Also, don't be singularly faceted and branch out with other instruments. Many of us want to be the lead guitar player, but learn keyboards and percussion. Being skilled there will get you gigs. When I went to school for film scoring, it actually ended up that some scores that I did landed me guitarist gigs and vice versa. In my strange career, I actually played for 2 different sets of female identical twins. Both times I got the gig because of film scores I did. Somehow the work made it across the desks of a manager or an MD that was discussing having a more film score sound for the bands that they were working with. And they called to see if I wanted to create or collaborate on some songs or albums. I actually remember going to the first kind of audition rehearsal of one of the more prominent groups that I played for. I went there kind of as an observer, but I brought my guitar. And when I met the guitarist who was there to audition as like an alternate, I could see immediately that he wasn't right for the gig. And I've auditioned for gigs like that where, like him, I knew I wasn't in my element, but it's still good to go through with it, as you can't really rehearse auditioning. So yeah, you have to just go and do it. As a matter of fact, just go and audition for as much as you possibly can, get a feel for it. Get to know somebody in the business. Don't abuse, but use that connection wisely. Genuinely look for and ask and use their guidance. I already hear your questions out there of, well, how do you meet them? It doesn't ultimately matter how you do meet them. At the gym, at a coffee spot, at a gathering place like a bar or club, or even at church. What does matter is how you approach them for help. No one is likely to just give you a job or a gig after an introduction. Create a rapport with them and cultivate it. I myself can't necessarily give you any more help than I am right here and now, but remember this. If I ever offer to help, that means I'm genuinely interested. Take people up on their offerings. Next, know your limits and live in the fringes of them. So here's an example. If you saw my ear training video, that episode, you might know somewhat how I feel about learning other people's solos and having to play the same solo over and over again. In spite of this, I joined a cover band that had a really big following. I learned so many songs and solos, and I also learned that I was pretty good at it. I even helped them get residency at a major music venue chain. Now, ultimately, I left that gig for other reasons, but I found out very quickly that playing covers in that kind of situation was not what I wanted to do for extended periods of time. I have to say, though, it was really good for me. It was really good for me, though. It was a very good learning experience. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with a few more thoughts to finish this part of the episode before moving on to rehearsing a band. You are competing with everyone who is making music these days. Have a demo that is as good as something that you would hear in a film score. And by that, I mean sonically, as it would relate to your style of music. It just has to stand out as not being a demo and being something that's complete, something that you could sell or monetize and be proud of. Some of you might think about going to a school or college that specializes in music production or performance. You are going to need support. And that's going to be the focus of another episode later. But on that note, let me just say, for me, success and fulfillment has never been found in paychecks. It is doing what I love and being able to do it as often as I could. Success was preparing for and playing a show and then turning around and being able to do it again. So that's something to keep in mind. A good place to start for someone who thinks they want to do something in music as a career is to form a band. Now, I say this not because you're going to learn every skill you need to do and everything I speak about in this episode, but you can start a band nearly anywhere at almost any age. You have to schedule time to meet, you have to figure out songs, but most importantly, you have to learn how to navigate people and their egos. You must learn to coexist. That's the most important thing in this business. Just remember, even the best need help sometimes. Within a band, always aim to be someone who is committed by being eager to rehearse and early to rehearsals. Know your parts, and if you can, everyone else's. Come to rehearsals prepared to rehearse. That means knowing the songs that you discussed for rehearsal ahead of time. Rehearsals are not for learning, they are for rehearsing. So do your best to come, prepared, knowing songs without needing the sheet music. Now, if you are bringing a new song, then of course, no one will know it unless you shared it ahead of time. So it goes without saying that in that case, you'll be doing some teaching or some learning. Now, unless you or someone you care for is very ill, do not miss rehearsal. If you're going to be late, contact everyone the second that you know and let them know that you're going to be tardy. Set clear and obtainable goals for every rehearsal. Like, we're going to play through these songs, or we're going to do this set list. Once you're ready, try to do at least one show a month. You have to get used to playing and working in front of others. We rehearse no less than once a week, but normally we hit it twice a week, especially when we have a show coming up. Again, don't overdo it. There is such a thing as over rehearsing. This is the most diplomatic band I've ever been in. We have very good communication, and no one's been stabbed more than twice. Twice? Twice. Okay, so two things that I omitted because I want to have a very frank discussion, and this video is going a little long. So, one, you have to have support if you're going to be any kind of artist. That means many different things. And I'm going to cover that in a later episode, kind of. But right now, number two, this business has a very long memory. Don't be a jerk. This isn't about blacklisting, but there are places and people that I will never work with again. And I'm sure vice versa. I keep all that information to myself. Just don't be a jerk. And sometimes that's easier said than done. The last piece of advice is one of the most important lessons that I learned from school, and I didn't learn it from any class or teacher or visiting lecture. I learned it from Eddie McGrath, a psychology professor at Berkeley. And it revolves around one of the most important qualities that you need to have in the entertainment business. PTBI. If you already know what that is, then great. If not, then stay with me here. For my entire life, I genuinely have been the last part of that acronym interested. We'll get to the rest of it in a second. I don't have to fake it. If I'm talking to anyone and gushing about something, it's because that's truly who I am. And comment below if you know me and you know just how much this is a true statement, then please comment. I'm excitable. The full phrase is pretend to be interested. Fake it till you make it is not just for jazz, and it's important. Do not fake listening to people. Listen to them intently, and not just because you're waiting for your turn to talk. Listen to them like you are in a band with them and you are trying to complement and collaborate on your conversation. Okay? All right. So I will have some announcements coming up for some giveaways that are going to be happening in later episodes. Nothing big for right now. But it's starting to snowball, and so yeah, there'll be some cool things. Look forward to that in some of the upcoming episodes. Okay, babbling, I'm getting excited. All right, until then, guys, I will see you from the stage. Your promise of living is all that